So you have this pattern, but you don't know where to start. Let me help you. But first, I want to introduce myself. My name is Micheline, and I like to share sewing techniques and also my journey to sewing more for myself and sharing some tips and hacks with you all that would help you along your sewing journey. So let's talk about this pattern here. The first thing we do realize is that, or notice, is that it is a simplicity pattern. Here you have the S in the pattern number that stands for simplicity, number 8880. And then you have four different views. And of course, the lovely model who's modeling the top. Now, if you're like me, I see something on the model on the picture and I'm like, oh, yes, I like it. I'm going to make this. This is going to look so good on me. But I have to stop myself there most of the time and remind myself to go to my favorite part of every pattern, and that is the technical drawing here. Why the technical drawing? Let me explain. I'm able to see more details on the garment. For instance, if you're looking at the front of the pattern where you have your floral, you may not know, if you don't sew, you may not notice that this is gathered in a few places. You may not know how many panels are on this one on UB. So the technical drawing is there to help us see all the details when it comes to sewing. So here I know that there is a gathered waistline. I have an invisible zipper. There's gathers at the sleeve and gathers at the bottom of the sleeve. On view A, there is a long sleeve. Looks like a bishop sleeve here with gathering at the bottom. That shows me that there's more than likely elastic. There's gathering here at the top. And then the bottom of the bodice here where the waist is, under the waist, there are panels. So I have two options. Next thing I like to do is see how many pieces there are, because if you're new to sewing, who wants to sew 20 something pieces, right? So if you're not comfortable with sewing yet, you might want to keep this one for the future when you've gained more experience of sewing, maybe like 4 to 6 pieces versus jumping into 16 pieces, because it can be time consuming but well worth it. So don't let that deter you, but just be mindful that it is 16 pieces. Next, I see that it's a Mrs. top. And then underneath it tells me my fabric options. This is very important. Sometimes we can look at the front of the paper, the envelope, and think, oh, I know what fabric this is, but not necessarily always accurate, right? Especially if you're not used to sewing and you're not familiar with different fabrics and the density and the weight of fabrics. So here's some options. So this, the back of the pattern envelope, really take all the guesswork out of it. It tells you your options and what you'll need. So you can grab you a lightweight brocade, maybe a silky fabric, a stretch denim, and you can do some plaids or stripes, but just remember to get extra in your yardage. That way you're able to match up your stripes, your plaid, or your patterns accordingly. And then we have notions. This is my favorite. I've been notorious in the past, in the beginning years, to not grab what I need to make the project. And it sits forever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to go get this from the store. Now, if you've been sewing for a while, you're going to have your basic thread colors and even maybe some other options. But in elastic too, that's something you can always keep on hand. But it lets me know I need a 14-inch invisible zipper. I need thread. I need bias tape. So always grab those if you're going to purchase your pattern in the store. That way you don't have to take the guesswork out of trying to remember what you have at home. Secondly, I'm going to go back first to the front of the envelope. I forgot to mention that you do have a US size. Now, this is not the dress size that we wear at Macy's. So I'm not going to go grab an 8 or a 10, right? Because that's not what this actually means. That's just the standard industry size for pattern making, okay? What we are going to go off of, though, are our body measurements, okay? And put a pin mark here because this is very important. When you're using a commercial pattern, and you're going to cut, this is a top here, so we're going to work with the blouse, right? We're going to go off our bust measurement, but not our round bust measurement, our full bust measurement, which is the round. We're going to use our upper bust measurement, and that is above our breasts, under our armpits, all the way around. And I can do a video in the future showing what that measurement looks like. Why? Because you want to make sure that the armhole is going to fit accordingly and not be too so loose. And also the neck area is, we're not going to have all that gapping if we go with the upper bust measurement. Okay. I do have a book. I have to find it, but I believe it's Nancy Zeman. She actually gives instructions on why this is important. You have your waist measurement, you have your hip below the waist and your back neck. Usually you can take those measurements, but just focus on your bust measurement, your upper bust measurement. Well, I'll go with mine. For instance, I cut a 36, right? And I did make some adjustments to the waist because that didn't fit me. That's for another video. Also, I'm going to see how much lining I need for my particular project. One thing I also want to note is it also give you the top options, your A, B, C, or D. And these numbers here, these are the widths of the fabrics that you purchase. So if I'm going to purchase fabric that's only 45 inches in width and I'm cutting a 36, I'm going to need 2 yards and 1/8. But if it's going to be 60 inches in width, I'm going to only need 1 yard and 50, it's not 58, 1 yard and 5/8 of fabric. Now, I personally always I round up on my yardage, either round up like to the next whole number. So really, I'm going to do 2.5. I probably do a yard. I probably still do 2 yards. I like to just go up to whole numbers. It's easy for me. Or I'll just get 3 yards, right? So I have more than enough. But keep in mind, if you're doing stripes or some design that need to be matched up, you will need more. Lastly, at the bottom, you have your finished garment measurements with design ease. Now, that is going to be your preference. There are some standards that you can go with. At least you want to do about maybe at 1 or 1.5 in your bust, 1 inch in the waist, and then your hips probably about 2 inches, right, for ease, depending if you like your clothes to fit a little tighter. So I just wanted to share that here, and it also tells you the finished length from the back base of the neck. Now for the bust, remember I did a 36. That's letting me know that a 38.5 is going to be the ease that I have in the bust. And if I'm comfortable with that, I'll just stick with that. And then you also have it in another language. So that's how you pretty much read a pattern. Envelope, a quick recap. You're not going to choose this US size, okay? You're going to go with the size based on your bust measurement, your upper bust measurement. And then we're going to look at the technical drawing on the back to see what all design details are there and how much sewing we're probably going to be doing. And also look at how many pieces there are. I have bought patterns that were over 20 pieces and I was just over, especially if you're making like pants and you're going to line them and you have to do a welt pocket. It can be a lot. So be mindful of how many pieces are in your pattern. Make sure you grab your notions. Make sure you grab fabric that's going to accommodate this particular pattern well. And also remember, this is the pattern number. So if you have any questions, let me know. Let me know what's your go-to resource when you're looking at a pattern. What do you like to look at first? Is there anything that kind of deter you from a particular pattern? Is there something missing on these envelopes that you think these companies could or should add to these patterns to make it more friendly for us to read and understand? Thank you so much for watching this video. Until next time, later.